Good evening, grave robbers, and welcome back to the television graveyard. We are your TV necromancers, Laura Prince and Noah Houlihan. We have come here tonight for the 250th time.
Woo!
With me, as always, is TV's Noah Houlihan.
You, as always, are the master of deception.
Not the quote I thought you were going to go with.
May I preamble a smidge before we jump into this?
Preamble away.
All right, so this is a bit of a surprise, I think, for most of you what is about to happen. But this is the 250th episode of this very podcast. A podcast that was supposed to last 1 year. And here we are, 250 episodes in.
And nearly 7 years.
And nearly 7 years. And honestly, that number could be higher because I believed one show, one episode. We could inflate that number a lot if we had counted, things like Freaks and Geeks.
If Cop Rock had been... Oh, if you count how many episodes...
Yes. Don't start the Cop Rock Redux argument right now. People are already upset that this episode is not Copyright Redux.
Baby merchant.
What I'm saying is that this could have been more episodes because, Freaks and Geeks is 5 parts, but still considered one episode.
Yeah, Kid Nation is 3.
Yes, things like that.
So probably all said and done, we've done over 300 Stay Doomed episodes.
Probably something like that.
And we do have a lot of between the numbers. We have an entire season that's almost entirely tune out.
Yes, we have the tune out episodes. But one thing I wanted to say as we look back for a moment at what we've done with what Stay Doomed is, there's really 3 types of episodes of Stay Doomed. If you don't count, the bonus episodes, the interviews, the we go to a weird place episodes, there's really 3 types of episodes. 1, what we always say, a show that ran 1 season or less.
Yeah.
2, a different type of Doomed, a lost media or banned episode.
Yes.
Taking a look at something where the people decided, or a company decided, that this should not be seen, and it was hidden away. And
Correct.
Should it have been hidden away? And then, Razzies, where we step out of the television graveyard and look at movies. We go to the movie mausoleum, and we look at movies that were decided to be doomed by the fans. The fans decided this is a bad thing and deserves to be doomed. We've done movies, or we've done TV shows that were doomed by the production company. We've done TV shows that were doomed by the censors or by people who owned it trying to hide it. And we've done movies that were doomed by the fans. We've never combined those ideas to do a TV show that was doomed by the fans. A TV show that the fans decided should be doomed because of what it does to the fandom. And we're going to correct that right here, right now. This is what is considered to be the worst episode of The Simpsons.
Not only the worst episode of The Simpsons, it is the episode that is generally credited with being the death of the golden age of The Simpsons.
Yes, this is the shark jump. This is the episode where The Simpsons died. We saw a bunch of videos on YouTube that were labeled that. This is Season 9, Episode 2 of The Simpsons. This is The Principal and the Pauper.
Yes.
I'm very excited to sit here and talk about an episode of television that was deemed doomed by the fans. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think you're going to hear a take that you've never heard on this episode. So, if you want to watch before you listen, if you're a Simpsons fan or a Simpsons newbie, you can log on right now to Disney Plus and watch Season 9, Episode 2. And then we'll be here when you get back. If you hit pause, if you let it play, we'll probably be done by the time you get back.
One of the things I find very interesting, before we even jump in, is there are classic episodes in this season. This is very early in season 9. This is the second episode of season 9.
Yes.
There are a number of classics this season that, if you're talking about the heyday of The Simpsons, you're thinking about some of these.
Lisa the Skeptic is one of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons.
Miracle on Evergreen Terrace.
Yeah, that's another great episode of The Simpsons. It should be noted, before we go on, that Laura and I, in the brief bit of spare time we have, the 23 minutes of spare time we have each evening, have been rewatching The Simpsons.
Yes.
So we've been watching The Simpsons. We got to this episode and we kind of looked at each other and went, stay tuned?
Yes. This is one I've actually seen the whole episode, because I do fall asleep.
Laura often falls asleep during this.
And then I have to look up the TV Tropes article on it the next day to find out what show I had just watched.
So let's break it down. Let's discuss this episode, give a quick summary, and decide if this really deserves to stay doomed.
So one of the things I find interesting is this aired the day before my 10th birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just think that's super interesting. So it starts off with like an establishing character moment for Skinner, just kind of like wandering around the school being Skinner.
Yes. This I find a touch odd because Seymour's a bad principal.
Yeah.
But in this episode, he's a very good principal.
They don't really say that he's a good principal. He's uptight.
Yes. He's checking for dust.
Like calibrating the bell
to be the right chime, and he's also make sure that the clocks run in sync with his pocket watch. And he opens his pocket watch and there's a picture of his mother in the watch.
Yes.
Remember that. Behind him is Super Nintendo Chalmers,
Not Super Nintendo Chalmers.
Who is kind of like sneaking around behind him so that Skinner doesn't see him, so he can sneak into the principal's lounge to talk to the teachers. First off, love the line, "Would you like some coffee-flavored beveragine?"
I'll take it gray, thank you.
Yes, I drink it gray. Just great little just like throwaway line. Be like, we are too poor for coffee.
I mean, I wasn't even thinking it was too poor for coffee. Have you ever worked in an office where, like, there was just the gross coffee machine?
So, if I may, I worked in an office for a while, and I was put in charge of making the coffee, because I was the only person that could make the coffee well. Like, it was always gross unless I made it, because when I made it, I would pour cinnamon on top. And nobody knew how to do that. So whenever anyone drank, they were like, when Noah makes the coffee, it's so Christmassy. And that's job security, folks. That's how you play the game.
Because I remember in college, like, I used to live off crappy machine coffee.
Oh, yeah.
And you would, like, cut it with crappy machine hot chocolate in an effort to make it palatable.
Yes.
Because no amount of cream or sugar was going to make that, like, legally food.
Right.
That was just a diatribe about coffee.
Yeah.
You still make coffee for us. As anyone who listened to the COVID era episodes remembers.
Yes.
Our good friend, Interrupting Coffee Pot.
Yes. R.I.P.
Yeah.
We don't have that coffee pot anymore.
Yeah, and I actually realized, I'm like, I think the current coffee pot at Stay Doomed Studios does not make
Does
noise.
not do that. So, it is the 20th anniversary of Seymour as principal. So they're going to throw a big party for him. Isn't that nice? So we get some nice bits of someone has to write a speech.
Yeah, and it's Lisa's class, so Lisa and Ralph decide to do it.
Yes, and Ralph.
They for some reason put Bart in charge of refreshments.
Bart's class is in charge of refreshments, and he makes America balls. Which, because we know that Skinner is an army vet, they're meatballs with American flags in them. And he's like, Bart says, but why are you making them out of dog food? And Bart goes,
my theory is Skinner likes dog food.
Yeah, and she just accepts that.
They are then eaten by Homer, and they decide to make a cake instead.
Yes.
So there is a great bit where it is silhouette night at the Skinners.
Yeah, every Friday night they draw silhouettes.
So it's Principal Skinner sitting in front of like a bright light so his shadow can be cast onto a piece of paper so his mother can, I guess, trace it?
I believe
or
so.
cut it out of a piece of like construction paper.
Yeah, these are very common to have done in like resort areas. You can have them done in Disney World.
Really?
Yes.
I was like, what is this?
There are people for whom that is their big souvenir, like, is they get annual silhouettes done. Most people, as it turns out, do not do them weekly.
Yes, that makes sense. As they all look identical. And Skinner's mother comes down and says, in a beautiful dress. And Skinner's like, why are you dressed in a beautiful dress? And she's just like, shut up.
I'm sick of this house and I'm sick of you. Tonight we're going for a drive.
Like, just, abusive and mean.
Yes, it's very funny. She drives him to the school. And he's
Mother,
like,
why are we passing my school?
And what did that sign say? Shut up. And he is brought into the assembly hall where everybody yells surprise. And Skinner's like, you are still the master of deception. This leads to a fun little gag-filled assembly for Principal Skinner, where this I don't understand, but it's funny. They sing the Flipper theme song?
They call him Skinner, Skinner.
Why? It's just a weird thing that happens. It doesn't really seem to be referencing anything.
My theory is somebody did it in the writer's room and somebody was like, that's really funny, let's do that.
Yes.
Because it's like the kind of corny stuff, like, it's the kind of corny stuff you do at a public school assembly.
Yes. It's very, talent showy. There is then a bit where we see the report that Lisa and Ralph created. Lisa's giving important backstory of what we know about Skinner.
Yes.
That he was, a vet and how he came home from his platoon to become principal and all this. And Ralph's just being silly and saying things like, I was sent to the principal's office because I was dirty. And when I grow up, I either want to be a principal or a caterpillar.
Yes. Which is kind of endearing.
Classic Ralph. And while all this is going on, a car drives by.
Yeah.
And a man in shadow says, oh, surprise party for Seymour Skinner. Driver, stop the car. And we don't see the driver, and we never will. That never comes up again, which is a bit odd.
No, in fact, we are pointedly made aware that there is not a car for this person.
Yes. Very odd. But he bursts in, and
Right as Seymour Skinner says, I've never been prouder to be Seymour Skinner.
And this man comes in and says,
You're not Seymour Skinner. Skinner. Skinner? I'm Skinner.
implying that he recognizes this person and is calling this new person Skinner. After a moment of confusion, Principal Skinner will then reveal the truth that this new person that has walked in is actually Seymour Skinner. And his name is Armin Tarzarian. And he is a fraud.
Yes. Armin Tarzarian served in Vietnam with the real Seymour Skinner.
Yes. When he tells the story, there's a great bit where he was a no-good-nick. And he was like a petty thief that would ride around on his motorcycle. And he says, I should have known this sort of action would soon put me in front of a judge. And then he crashes his motorcycle into a judge.
Yes.
Which is a great bit.
And I actually love the choice he's given. He could do prison, join the military, or apologize.
Or apologize.
He chooses the military because he was unaware of the Vietnam War.
Which I feel like is a joke that is a bit lost today. Because in that time, it would be impossible not to know about the Vietnam War because there was a draft.
I mean, yeah, and Armin... I guess the theory is that Armin would have ignored.
Yeah, he just ignored the draft.
Like, I'm not as familiar with the Vietnam era draft as I used to be, because I feel like I did at one point know a great deal more about this. Let me look this up.
Well, what I'm kind of trying to say while you're Googling is, if I were to write this joke today, the joke wouldn't be something like, I was unaware of the war in Russia. Because that joke would be, basically, I'm not informed on politics. If I were to try to write this joke today, the joke would be, I was not aware of the internet. Because it was just such a crucial point of life in general that you faced every day, that you couldn't avoid it. So that's the joke that's being made there. And I think it's a little underappreciated now without the historical context in mind.
So he goes to Vietnam and he meets Seymour Skinner, who's his commanding officer, I believe is the relationship.
Yes.
And this is actually before Saving Private Ryan, but it reminds me of that, like, the Tom Hanks character in Saving Private Ryan.
A bit, yeah, that
Like,
makes sense.
The small town educator.
Yeah, it is kind of similar.
Which is funny, because Saving Private Ryan's summer of 98.
Oh, so this episode of The Simpsons inspired Saving Private Ryan? Is that what you're saying?
I can't officially say it didn't.
Okay, so yeah, so for those of you who think this is a bad episode, it inspired Saving Private Ryan.
Okay, so Saving Private Ryan filmed from June to September 1977.
1977?
Filming took place from June to September 1997, so there was a good chance filming had ended just before this episode aired.
Okay.
So it's unlikely there was any influence, but that's kind of funny.
I want to real quick point out that there's a moment where Bart breaks into the story and says, can you get to the part where you steal his identity? And Skinner says something along the lines of, I'm building the emotional through line. And Bart goes, oh, that's one of these stories, isn't it? Remember that. Moving on. While they are fighting overseas in Vietnam, there's a moment where Armin believes that Skinner is killed.
Yes.
It turns out he is not, because he is back.
But he has been taken, he's missing, presumed dead. Mm-hmm. And Armin decides to take the role of taking the flag to Skinner's mother.
It should also be noted that Skinner gave Armin the watch we saw earlier.
Yes.
The watch that has his mother's picture in it. Remember that. When he goes to take the flag to Skinner's mother is an older woman and gets confused and says, is that you, Skinner?
Is that more you, Seymour?
Seymour, yeah, I guess that's her last name. So she wouldn't say that. Is that you, Seymour? And Armin is not sure why he did it, but he couldn't bring himself to break this old woman's heart. And says yes. Thus starting the charade that he is Seymour Skinner, fooling an old woman. Sort of.
I was going to say, do you think she is fooled? Or do you think she's like, replacement goldfish.
She absolutely knows it's not her son.
Yeah, because she tells him...
As strange as it sounds, deep down I think she knew I wasn't her son, but a lie made us both happier than the truth ever could have.
You can have some lima beans as soon as you've cleaned your room. Go! Upstairs. Third door on the left.
So she knows. That's an important crux to this episode, is that this is kind of Seymour Skinner's mother's way of dealing with her son's death, is refusing to accept it and kind of forcing this man to play the role of her son. And it was always Skinner's dream to be a principal, so Armin follows what Seymour would have done if he survived and becomes the principal of Springfield Elementary.
So now that the real Seymour is back, he is going to become the new principal, and Armin decides he is going to go to Capital City and essentially go back to what he was doing in Vietnam era.
Yes, there's one thing I want to bring up here, is there's a weird moment where he is signing a check at the Quickie Mart. And he says, do you mind if I put my real name or do you want my old name? And Apu says, just sign an X and call yourself whatever you want. To show that the town is turning on him.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I'm still the same man I was, just my name's changed. And Marge says, no, you're not. To us, you are someone else. Imagine if Ned Flanders turned out to be an imposter.
And Skinner goes, who?
Who? Who's Ned Flanders? Which is very funny, because the idea that, like, everyone in Springfield doesn't know each other is not something we often think of as the audience, just because everyone's always interacting with everyone.
Yeah.
And Marge says, the religious fellow.
Yeah, our neighbor, the religious guy. Reverend Lovejoy?
Reverend Lovejoy? He's like, no! But I just thought that was a very funny, like, repartee, and I want you to remember that.
Yeah, because I was about to say, I'm thinking through it, I'm like, there's definitely been other episodes where Skinner and Flanders have interacted.
I can't think of any.
I think when Flanders' house floods, I think Skinner is with the people fixing it.
Yeah, also his children might go. Do Rod and Todd go to Springfield, or are they homeschooled?
I believe they do not go to public school.
Yeah.
Because I believe they are at one point threatened with public school.
That makes sense. Okay.
Because I think there is at one point where, like, Bart is going to need to, like, guide them through public school, and he's like, they're going to eat you alive.
Yes, yes.
I feel like that was in a season 8 episode, because I feel like I just remember it recently.
I think maybe it might also be when Lisa is their babysitter.
Yes.
Like, public school's going to eat them alive. But that's a good call out. So it actually does, except for when the hurricane knocks down Ned's house, Seymour might have helped rebuild it. But, yeah, I don't know if they've ever actually interacted. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that, because I am thinking about whether, in a much, much, much later episode, I do believe them going back to Springfield is a plot point.
Yeah.
Them going back to the Springfield public school. So one can assume that either Maude homeschools or that they are in, but I think in like very early episodes they're in the background at Springfield Elementary before they had more characters.
Yes. Something to think over. So, we then have this moment where it turns out that Armin's just going to leave town because he's not interested.
He goes to a storage unit and gets his old motorcycle back.
Yes. There's a bit I need to say.
Oh, yeah.
That's very important is he hands over what he has back to Seymour. Armin's like, listen, here's the life I lived. Here is, you're part of the Radio Shack Battery Club.
Yes.
Radio Shack was like a terrible Best Buy back in the day.
I don't think that's actually how... Radio Shack was like for people who were actually like building. Like, it had, like, sprockets and
Yes, it was full of
crap.
sprockets and transistors and such. And he also gives him, like, I think $10 Canadian for some reason. And this is one of the best bits of dialogue I've ever seen in The Simpsons.
Yeah?
He gives him back the watch.
Yes.
And he says,
Oh, I nearly forgot. Your pocket watch. Mother's picture is still inside. Take good care of her.
I'll wind her every day.
here's your watch back. It still has Mother's picture in it. Take good care of her. And Seymour replies, I'll wind her every day.
Which, like...
Armin's talking about Mother.
Agnes,
He's talking about the Agnes. And Seymour Skinner has now returned and doesn't have that relationship with his mother that he thinks he's talking about the watch.
Yeah.
That is such good writing.
Yeah. Because it also shows that, like, Armin is walking away from and giving up.
Yes.
Like, what he knows. He also... we pick up a thread that was established quite a long time ago, his relationship with Edna Krabappel.
Yes.
They've gotten together and broken up because it was like, they couldn't really, like, make it work while being colleagues. So he goes to say goodbye to her now that they're not colleagues.
Oh, they're still together.
Oh, that's right, they're secretly together.
They're secretly still together. And he says,
Good evening, Edna. I know we were planning to see a film tonight, but instead I'm leaving town forever.
No, please. I don't care what you've done. You're still a decent, honorable man.
That's the kind of talk that makes me want to marry you.
Oh.
But instead I'm leaving town forever. Goodbye.
that killed me.
And so he departs and he says goodbye to several students of Springfield Elementary.
Yes. With a hearty,
Up yours, children.
up yours, children.
And I think this is the line when you and I were watching this episode where we started to laugh and we're like, this is actually a really good episode.
This is because
The delivery of this is very funny.
yes, there's two things I want to talk about with this moment. One, like I said earlier, we were rewatching The Simpsons from the beginning. So we had been watching The Simpsons for a while. We got to this episode, and suddenly we were like, do you want to watch something else? Do you want to, maybe we'll just watch YouTube tonight. Because we were dreading this episode because we knew its reputation.
Yeah.
And then we got to this moment, and I was like, this episode kind of rocks.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of love this episode. And the bit of comedy about this that I want to bring up, because it reminds me of a similar joke in Futurama. There's a moment in Futurama where they become superheroes. And they are trying to figure out what powers they have. They're like, well, we could have super strength, and then they do something super strong. They're like,
Yes.
okay, we got that. We could be super fast, and they do something super fast. Oh, well, we got that. We could have the power to control sea life. And Bender goes, hey, Zoidberg, come in here. And Zoidberg yells from off camera, up yours! Which is a great joke, but completely against what Zoidberg would do. Like, for that one moment in time, Zoidberg's a jerk to make that joke work. This is kind of the same bit, but it works on so many more levels because this is truly who he is.
He's returning to who he once was.
Yes. Up yours, children. Killed me. There's also an interesting bit here where the Simpsons kind of argue the importance of a name.
Yeah.
And Lisa makes the argument that, like,
But Mr. Tamsarian pulled himself up from the streets and earned our respect and admiration.
He lied about his name.
His name doesn't matter. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
Not if you called him Stench Blossoms.
and if you've only watched this in syndication, you wouldn't know the rest of these bits because that's where the cut was when it was on syndication.
Really?
Yes, because I remember distinctly liking that joke, but that was like a hard cut. There's a whole extra bit of like...
Or crapweed.
I'd sure hate to get a dozen crapweeds for Valentine's Day. I'd rather have candy.
Not if they were called scumdrops.
And I was just like, oh, I don't remember this. Because I used to watch The Simpsons all the time. But that was like a thing that they would cut to add more commercials in the syndicated version of this episode. Here's a fun fact.
Yeah, that is interesting. I do find cut for syndication to be very interesting as a concept. Because the easiest cuts are always in comedies.
Yes.
You can just cut jokes. Which is bad. But jokes you can cut without losing
Yeah, because they're not plot.
Especially because this is actually a Simpsons episode that is fairly light on The Simpsons.
Yes.
So I do feel like this scene sort of exists to center The Simpsons a little bit.
Yes.
To kind of be like, oh, by the way, we're still with The Simpsons. This isn't just about Seymour Skinner for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's just a Simpsons moment. So we then establish when the new Principal Skinner comes home late.
Well, we do have a scene of him at the school.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Where he asks Bart to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Bart is Bart.
Yes.
And Seymour, like, snaps because he served in Vietnam and then was a prisoner for 20-some years.
Yes, he's
so
not a principal.
Well, and he's also, like, very patriotic because 20-odd years of his life were in service to the United States, and so he's not going to take disrespecting the flag lightly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says something like, what about someone who gave up their youth educating the children? Ms. Crabapple. And Krabapple's like, you haven't talked to women in a long time.
Are you asking me out?
No.
It should be noted that, because we didn't bring this up yet, that it's Martin Sheen doing Seymour Skinner, which is a funny pick just because he is famous for Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
So playing a prisoner of war. And he crushes it in this episode.
Yes.
He absolutely crushes it. We then have this establishing moment where the new Seymour Skinner comes home late on Silhouette Night. And
he was at a bar.
He was at a bar and he's refusing to partake in Silhouette Night and is actually getting changed and going back out to party.
Yeah,
and
he's changing into a turtleneck.
Agnes does not care for this. So we are now establishing that even though this is her son, Agnes does not care for him. And ends up meeting with
just by chance.
By chance.
They're just in the checkout line at the market.
Yes, with Marge, who she, admits, I can't stand this man.
What Marge asks is very funny. So how's your new son working out?
Yes.
The same way you would ask someone about a new job or if they'd gotten a new car. In a way that's not even how you would ask someone if they'd had a new baby.
Mm-hmm.
How's your new son working out?
Son working out.
The same way you'd ask someone about, a back deck they had installed.
And she hates them. And then Edna Krabappel's like, is this the line for people who want to complain about Seymour Skinner? And Marge says, if you have 10 items or less. And Miss Krabappel just throws, pineapples out of her cart. And he's like, down to 10, the man's a weenie.
13, 12, 11, the man's a weenie. I always forget how much I love Krabappel as a character.
Yes, Edna Krabappel's such a good part of The Simpsons. R.I.P.
She's such a great character.
And then this exchange is so funny. Homer is driving, and Edna and Agnes are sitting next to him. And he just goes, all right, let's go over this again. Why are you here? It's like, we're going to Capital City to pick up Armin. Well, why is Marge here? Because I can't...
It was my idea.
Well, then why am I here?
Capital City is no place for 3 unattended ladies.
Oh. But then why are the kids here?
Because we couldn't find Grandpa to babysit him.
But then why is Grandpa here?
I got lost.
No, the answer is because Jasper didn't want to go alone.
Right.
And then Jasper just turns around and gives a thumbs up, and Homer just goes, fair enough. Incredible bit. What an incredible bit that is.
Jasper's an underrated character.
Yes, I love Jasper as well. I love all the Simpsons characters. They then find Armin in the apartment that he had before he got sent to the war, and trying to pick up his life where it left off as a no-good Nick. And there is a great, argument where Armin is like, you have your son. This is my life. And she says, you're my son. I had you longer.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of established that Skinner's been principal for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, that time wouldn't really make sense, because this is in 1997. This is when The Simpsons is still sort of trying to keep to 20 years ago was 1977.
Yeah.
So, in this interim, Skinner would have needed to probably go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been probably actively being Seymour Skinner for minimum 25 years. Longer than Seymour Skinner was Seymour Skinner.
Yeah. So, this is enough to convince Armin to go back.
Yes.
And he returns to Springfield, and everyone's happy to see him because that's the Seymour Skinner they know. Armin is the person that they know. And they all embrace him and accept him back. There's just one problem.
Well, then Agnes goes, everybody get in the car. And
yes.
And he goes, yes, mother.
Yes.
Just right back to old habits.
The problem is, Seymour Skinner's still here.
Yep.
And, this is his town that he grew up in. That is his mother. You just expect me to go away? Where is my dignity? Well, guess what? Homer's got a great way to solve all these problems where Armin can be Seymour Skinner again, and the real Seymour Skinner can keep his dignity. And then it smash cuts to him tied up on a train.
But I'm a hero!
And we salute you for it. Now don't come back.
Agnes says goodbye to her son, and the train pulls away. And a judge comes out and says,
by authority of the city of Springfield, I hereby confer upon you the name of Seymour Skinner, as well as his past, present, future, and mother.
Okay.
And I further decree that everything will be just like it was before all this happened, and no one will ever mention it again, under penalty of torture.
In an amazing ending, Seymour says, or Armin says, it feels good to be Seymour Skinner again, but my time as Armin has reminded me of the life I used to lead. You're gonna see a new Seymour Skinner. And Agnes immediately goes, no, you're not.
Yes, mother.
Yes, mother. And that's the end of the episode. I have some stuff to say.
Yeah, I think it's... I mean, this is not the first time The Simpsons has battled with the status quo, because Bart and Lisa talk about it in a much earlier episode, where Bart expresses concern and Lisa goes, don't worry, we're going to wake up next week and it'll be like none of this ever happened.
Very good. Very astute.
So we've already established the status quo tension.
Yes, status quo being God and things like that. But there are a few lines in here that I find very interesting that I want to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
The first being, how would you feel if Ned Flanders turned out to be an imposter? And he's like, I don't know who that is. It's like the religious guy. Oh, you mean Reverend Lovejoy. And that got me thinking. The Prince and the Pauper is a well-known story. This is nothing new for The Simpsons to do. Take a very well-known story and kind of give their spin of it. So...
They literally will do this again in several seasons with Bart and a rich child.
Yeah. I did not know that, but okay. But if you don't know The Prince and the Pauper, it's the story of two people switching identities. It's usually because they look the same, so there's a bit of a different take on this. But it's the idea of two people switching lives. Let's go back to being in the writer's room for The Simpsons, and someone pitches, let's do a Prince and the Pauper storyline. Who's pretty much the worst character to do that with? Well, I would say the worst character to do that with is the character, you can't really do it with a Simpson, right? Would be the character with the most backstory. Seymour pretty much has the most backstory of anyone who's not a Simpson.
So,
can you name a character who's not a child whose mother we know?
Let me think. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else who's not a Simpson.
I can think of
because I can think of like Marge, Patty, and Selma's mother is seen.
Yes.
Homer's mother obviously appears in a few episodes.
Yes.
I'm trying to think if there's anyone who's not a core character that we see their mother.
I can think of one. There is a brief moment where we see Mr. Burns' mother, because he can't handle a phone call from his mom.
Right. Burns, I think, would be the worst character to do the Prince and the Pauper.
Burns would be the worst character
because
to do
he's, one, the Prince, and this is generally done through the POV of the Pauper. The
yes.
character that you like is generally the Pauper. I would say this is more of a Martin Guerre situation.
A Martin Guerre situation.
Martin Guerre is, it's a musical. I think it's actually based on a book, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a musical where you find out a person has been essentially replaced another person.
Yeah.
And the fallout from that.
Okay.
So I was thinking of Martin Guerre a little bit with this.
Okay.
I don't think it's a straight retelling, but it felt a little closer to that than Prince and the Pauper. This kind of feels like, well, what if Prince and the Pauper just never ends?
Yeah. But the point I'm trying to kind of get through here is, if you're in the Simpsons writing room and you want to do a Prince and the Pauper type storyline where someone's actually an imposter, why wouldn't you pick a Ned Flanders or a Reverend Lovejoy, who we don't actually know the background of that much? The perfect character to do this with is Krusty the Clown. I
disagree. Krusty and Ned have both had episodes about their youth by this point. We've had the whole episode with Krusty's dad.
Right.
We've had the whole episode with, like, Ned's anger management issues.
We did have that. That's a good point.
You know who I think would be the one you'd want to do this with? Mo.
Yeah, you could do this great with Mo. You could, like, he decides to open a bar and assume this guy's dream of owning a bar. I think you could still do it with Krusty.
And that's why Mo's miserable all the time.
Yeah. You could still do it with Krusty depending on when it happens.
Sideshow Mel.
Sideshow Mel would be a good person to do this with. You could do this with
Reverend Lovejoy.
Reverend Lovejoy, exactly.
Because Lovejoy also has always sounded like a fake name.
Yeah.
So, like, him being, like, a burnout street tough.
Right.
Who then, like, serves with a man of God in the military and then, like, decides to walk a righteous path.
Right. Like...
Wait, that's actually legitimately a really good episode idea.
Yeah. We'll write a spec script and we'll send it out.
Matthew, call me.
Does Matthew even have any pull anymore with The Simpsons? I think he's so hands-off with it at this point.
I'm sure if he got a free idea and was like, hey, writer's room, free idea. Matt. The writer's room would be like, oh God, an idea? Yeah.
Get excited for episode 940.
An idea, you say?
So... I think it's a very interesting choice to basically pick one of the worst characters you could do this with. There's a line earlier in the series where Seymour says, I don't have a lot of money because Mother is making me pay her back for the food I ate as a child. Like, it's such a bad choice to choose Seymour Skinner for this. But I have a bit of a theory here.
Okay.
Okay? Because, quick side note, there's a YouTube channel I really like that just does Breaking Bad breakdown videos. Every video that he puts out is just a breakdown of a single episode of Breaking Bad. And it's just like, here's the things that are foreshadowing. Here's like editing mistakes. Here's continuity problems. Here's like a bit of interesting acting choices. Here's some directive flair. Like everything that's just like interesting about that single episode. As we've been rewatching The Simpsons, I kind of been playing with the idea of doing my own version of that for The Simpsons.
Okay.
I'll break down everything and from hey, this is an episode where they don't do the chalkboard gag. This is an episode where this is the couch gag. This is a reused couch gag. Things like that. So as I've been rewatching The Simpsons, I've been kind of scanning over the episodes and thinking about what interesting things would I say here? For example, we watched the episode recently where we find out the origins of Lisa's saxophone. Mm-hmm. And Bart and Lisa are younger.
Yeah.
Yet in the background, there's still pictures of Maggie who's not born yet. I was like, ha! That would be a cool thing for me to include in this. And one thing that is constantly running through my mind is canon.
Yes. On the Simpsons wiki, this is specifically listed as a non-canon episode.
Lies and slander. Not only am I about to prove to you that this is a canon episode, it's very purposely a canon episode. At this point, we are 9 seasons into The Simpsons. We are starting the 9th season of The Simpsons.
Sort of. This episode was delayed from season 8.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, so this is supposed to be a season 8 episode?
Yes.
Oh, that's an interesting bit of trivia.
So it was supposed to kind of be with some of the other episodes of season 8, which are a little stranger and more offbeat than a lot of the season 9 fare. Season 8 is the one that, season 8 is Frank Grimes.
Frank Grimey Grimes?
Poochie, I think, is season 8. The military school, the spin-offs. It's a lot of that, It also would have probably been in the same season shortly after Skinner and Krabappel's affair was...
Yes.
So, it would have been in the same season and wouldn't have felt like such a weird hold-off. Because it was supposed to be late in season 8.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the working title So the working title of this episode was Skinnersby, which was a reference to a film called Summersby, which was a Civil War retelling of Martin Gare! Hey!
Oh my goodness! Well, Laura's blown my mind. Let's see if I can blow her mind. So like I was saying, I've been scanning every episode for background details. But I do want to ask you this question. Now that we are 9 seasons, or beginning of 9 seasons, 8 seasons deep, what is an event that took place as a storyline beat that carried on to a new episode? If you really think about it, there's not really anything except for one thing.
Yeah, there'd be an odd reference, and that's it.
That there is one thing, one event that takes place that carries over forever. And that is the divorce of the Van Houtens.
Yes. Because I noticed that in a recent episode, that there's still a portrait of Mrs. Van Houten and Milhouse with no Kirk.
Yes, very good. So, like I've been saying, I've been scanning background details, because I like to kind of be like, I wonder who's in the background of this scene. Like, we watched an episode recently that had, a soccer riot, yet in the stands is, Superintendent Chalmers. I was like, that's a little weird choice to be at a soccer game, but whatever. Do you remember the girl that Bart has a crush on?
Laura.
Laura, yes. Laura's mom is constantly around and never speaks.
Yes, because she was I noticed her in, I think, the Little League episode.
Oh, you can see her all the time.
But I know, we watched the Little League episode recently, and I was like, oh. And if she speaks, it's in, a big crowd line. Get him!
You could see her in the Beer Baron episode. You could see, she's all over the place. But there are 3 grand shots here where there's a lot of people. There's the original celebration of Skinner. There's the assembly where Skinner says that he's not going to be principal anymore. And then there's the send-off of the real Skinner on the train. In all 3 of those background shots, when there's a group of people, they very intentionally put front and center Miss Van Houten and Turbo from American Gladiators, who she's dating now, because he left Kurt Van Houten.
I'm going to blow your mind real quick.
Yeah.
They reconcile in season 17.
That is amazing to know. But I digress. It seems very intentional during this whole thing that is ripping apart and destroying the canon of The Simpsons that they are reminding you canon matters. What happens here matters and will affect the future going forward.
I love that the only true canon event is that Kirk Van Houten sucks.
Right? But here's the thing. This is a canon event. This here is a canon event that ends with them saying, we will never talk about this again. This is canon. And that's the joke.
Yeah.
The joke is that this is a stupid, bad, commonly used storyline trope, and they're making fun of the fact that it's bad.
Yes.
So the fact that it pissed off a bunch of Simpsons fans being like, this is stupid and dumb, is the joke!
Yes.
That is 100% the gag. It's on you for not getting it. It is the same joke as in the Poochie episode when Roy shows up out of nowhere to add spice to The Simpsons.
And then disappears and is never seen again.
Exactly! This is them making fun of the idea of canon. And it's done brilliantly. This is so effectively done. And the idea of just being like, this is stupid, they're just not going to talk about it ever, well, it's by punishment by torture. So of course they're not going to talk about it again.
Well, and interestingly enough, it really does fit in with season 8 when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
Because that's in that same Itchy and Scratchy Poochie season.
Yeah, exactly.
So it might have been season 8. Are you familiar with a concept called the 7-year itch?
Explain it to our audience. I, of course, know.
The 7-year itch is generally in romantic relationships, often after 7 years of marriage, a couple will start to get tired of each other.
Right.
And look for a spark and look for something exciting. So perhaps if you've had a family animated sitcom that's run for 7 seasons, and you're starting to feel like perhaps it has run its course, but it's still making a lot of money and is still wildly popular, you start to get experimental with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think season 8, we see a lot of this experimental nature.
I mean, once you're hitting season 8, which it should be noted, was very rare for television at this time.
Yes.
Seinfeld ran 9 seasons, and they were like, I don't know if another show will ever do that again. Because Seinfeld was such a juggernaut.
Yeah, I mean, shows... Now a sitcom it is not uncommon for a sitcom to have a 7, 8, 9-year run.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, at this point in the life of The Simpsons, which I know is crazy because we're on season 30-some, the idea that this is an 8-year-old show, it's getting stale, would be a common thought.
Yes.
And what do you do to make something more interesting? You add a new character, or you mix up the canon. And this is them being like, nope! Screw you! We're The Simpsons!
I'm realizing there is another canon event. There is another event that is actually referenced later. Maggie shooting Mr. Burns.
This hasn't come up yet, but
it came up in an episode it didn't come up by the point of this episode, but it comes up very early in season 9.
Oh, did it?
In the Cartridge Family, which is the episode in which Homer has a gun.
Oh, okay. This where he has the line? Or bring it up. Bring up your thing and I'll bring it up.
They sort of go like, Maggie shot Mr. Burns. Should we really have a gun with these children?
Oh, okay.
Like, they directly say, like, Maggie shot Mr. Burns.
There is a...
And then someone goes, I thought Smithers did it.
That would have made a lot more sense. That is the line we just saw. There's a line much later where Homer says, like, Homer's, like, about to kill someone. And someone goes, Homer, don't do that. You'll go to jail for murder. And he responds, I'll just frame it on Maggie like I did when I shot Mr. Burns. That is, like, way later in the series, though.
Yeah, but that is one that is referenced. So there are a handful of canon events. I do believe in the Frank Grimes episode, he alludes to a few things Homer has done. Like, you've been to space!
That's true.
So some things do... I think anything that they can bring up has happened, but that also could be dismissed as being relatively recent. Because this kid, I mean, even unlike South Park, no one ages in The Simpsons. Yeah. We haven't even had anyone hit, like, a new grade.
Yeah.
Like, Lisa's been in second grade for almost 40 years.
Yeah. I just think this would be a time where they would have been getting notes like, hey, to mix things up, why don't you do this? Add a new character.
I mean, that's very much what the Poochie episode's about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Add something to, change up the storyline, mix it up a bit. And this is them saying, like, we're not going to do that. That's stupid. We're making fun of this. And it's done so well. Like, the fact that when Smithers, where did that come from? When Skinner is telling the story, Bart interrupts and says, oh, this is one of those stories. Implying this is not what The Simpsons does.
Yeah.
It's all so brilliant.
Yeah, I don't really understand the ire to this episode. It's taking the sitcoms always go back to the status quo to its, like, logical conclusion of, like, what ridiculous crap can happen?
Yeah.
And then we just go back to the status quo.
It's basically, if you're upset by this episode, it's like watching Blazing Saddles and going, they kept the blooper where they ended up on the wrong set. Man, this Mel Brooks doesn't know what he's doing.
Monty Python did a King Arthur movie, but they ran out of money at the end and got arrested and just filmed that. Yeah,
I paid for an ending. They're terrible at making movies. That is what the reaction would be if you don't like this episode. Because this episode is one of the funnier episodes to me. And has some real, like, heartwarming moments to it. There's, like, some real writing in this.
And some very, the Harry Shearer's line reading of Up Yours, Children is genuinely very funny.
And yes, it absolutely is. And the one thing that I do kind of want to, like, throw out there is we watched a video about this episode just to listen to, like, the hate.
Yeah.
I believe it was called I Got Touched in the Cinema. I think that was the name of the channel. But one of the points that he makes is it is debated amongst the people who create The Simpsons whether or not this episode is good. One of the quotes is like, one of the writers says, "This is one of the best things I've ever written."
Yeah.
Because he gets it. And then the voice of Seymour Skinner was like, "I hate this episode. I've always hated this episode." I would like to politely suggest, without evidence, that if you were the voice of Seymour Skinner and everyone came up to you and said, "I hate this episode," is it easier to say, "Me too," or say, "No, you don't understand meta commentary. Let me explain it to you"?
Yeah, like Matt Groening even says on the DVD commentary that this is my least favorite episode. Like, a lot of people seem to really hate this episode for this episode to have made it to air.
Yeah. Like, some people said, like, oh, it was an experiment and stuff like that. But I think it's a gag. And if you look at it as a gag, it's very funny. Because I will admit, there was a movie I absolutely hated called Phantom Thread. And if you're listening to this, you should be yelling at me right now. Because I was like, this movie is garbage and worthless and stupid, and everyone that I talked to loved that movie. And then I read a friend of mine, Dan Scully, read his article on Cynadelphia, wrote a review of it, and I read it because I was just like, Dan, explain to me why you enjoyed this film. And I read the whole review, and I was angry, and I was angry, I was angry. And then the last line of his review was, "By the way, this movie's a comedy." And I went, oh, it's a parody. And just having that click in my mind was like, oh, I see your value now. So, like, if you have been a person that was like, I've always heard this episode is bad and I skip it and I don't give it the time of day, watch it again with the knowledge that they're making fun of this as a concept.
Yeah.
The idea of throwing everything out of whack for the sake of a gasp. That's the parody of this whole thing. And it's executed very well with that in mind.
It really is.
So guess what?
What?
Stay tuned!
Yeah, I would say this is a stay tuned. I kind of love the idea of slipping in the occasional, very maligned episode.
Yes.
Because we've been doing this for nearly 7 years. And I think when you've been doing something for like 7 years, you start to maybe, think about changing things up. And maybe we're doing it differently. And Stay Doomed Studios is not big enough to add a third chair. So we're not adding characters.
No, certainly not. Except for that one time. Those 2 times.
Yeah, it was like 3. We've had 3 times where there's been someone else.
Really?
I believe Crybaby Lane.
Crybaby Lane.
And then we have had 2 interviews.
Well, I wasn't counting interviews. I was just talking episodes of, like, Stay Doomed. And it's just Crybaby Lane and Good Morning, which had Sean Houlihan on.
Yes.
In any case, we tried something new. If you hate it and you think this is the worst episode of Stay Doomed,
then you clearly don't get meta humor.
And I understand. But if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed this new take on Stay Doomed Studios, look at things the fans have decided are doomed, why don't you drop below what you believe is the most hated episode of your favorite show? And maybe at some point we will sit down and we'll watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Beer Bad or The Office's Scott's Tots. And we will let you know if those episodes deserved to stay doomed.
Interestingly, I'm gonna... Scott's Tots is not the episode I hear as the one no one likes.
Yeah, they just can't stomach it.
Yes. Actually, everyone's like, it's funny, I just can't make it.
Yeah.
Everyone's least favorite episode, everyone's least Michael Scott era episode is one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah?
Apparently everyone hates the Sweeney Todd episode.
Oh, no, this is a great episode.
Which is like one of my favorite episodes of The Office.
In any case, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for 250 episodes of Stay Doomed. I know that this summer has been a bit spotty with the upload schedule. This is entirely my fault. I've become a very busy man, and I'm very sorry. But I do still love doing this show after 250 episodes, plus bonus episodes, crowdfund crypt episodes. Tuning out with you guys has been absolutely great.
Stay Doomed Adventures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have... Stay Doomed. We may...
The Stay Doomed Day Clock.
Oh my goodness.
We only did one episode of that.
We did the countdown for a show that did get more than one season.
Yeah.
Despite being terrible. Next week may be a Stay Doomed adventure, but TBD.
We will see. But thank you so much for joining us for how long of this ride you have been on. Thank you to everyone that hangs out in the Discord. Hello, people in the Discord. If you want to join that, be sure to click the link down below. Or if you want to talk to us another way, where can people find us?
You can email us at thestaydoomedshow@gmail.com or on Facebook or Blue Sky at Stay Doomed.
And if you are the real Noah Houlihan who I replaced 20 years ago and you want to talk, I'm at TV's Noah on Blue Sky and Instagram.
If you just really appreciate a good line reading, I'm at Laura Crane on Blue Sky. Until next time, stay doomed.